what we call a paint event. And we are coming live to you from the city of Goodyear. And I'm Deborah Goley, and I'm partnering with the city. They've asked me if I would paint along with you. So we're going to just jump right into this painting. We're going to do a still life today. And I chose this still life because I'm thinking about fall. It's really warm here, and it's always my favorite time of the year, the fall colors and the scents that you smell. And so I just love that we can start thinking ahead and we survived this summer. If you were joining me last month, we did a monsoon landscape. So here we are going back inside doing a still life. I call this impressionistic because of the way that it was painted, the way that there are subtle brush strokes and it's not quite defined. Like this one is more defined, right? This one is more stylized and less of an impression of what's going on. These, I want the flowers to kind of look like they're moving. Maybe the ceiling fan caught them and they're kind of bustling in the air. You can also see I'm not putting much emphasis on what it's sitting on the table. I'm not too worried about the shadowing in this exercise. So I think this will be fun for beginners and fun for advanced people as well. And the colors themselves are all analogous. That means they're similar in color. We've got yellows and oranges and reds. So on the color wheel, they're very close to one another. Whereas over here, I have a cool background, a cool vase, and very warm flowers. If you don't want to do it like I'm doing it, that's fine. You can come up with your own color scheme. So speaking of color, what do you need today? I pre-poured all of my paint onto a foam plate. One, I can sit here and fan because it is rather warm out. And two, I can cover my paint, right, when I'm not using it, because I did pour it about 10 minutes ago, and I didn't want it to harden and dry out. But I also can use this other one to mix paint on. So my palette is on here. What's on my palette? I have yellow. I actually have two kinds of yellows today because I know there's a lot of yellow in this, but you can make a lighter yellow with your white. I have red, I have blue, I have green. I do not have purple, but I can make purple, I can make pink, I can make a a yellowy green. So you don't have to buy all the colors. You could just use what you have. And that's what I do. My tube paints, my craft paints, especially when I'm practicing. I don't have to go out and get a ton of really nice artist grade paints. I have some napkins handy. I have a yucky cup of water, right? Not to be confused with my good water. This is my good water right here. So I don't want to be confused when I am washing my brushes. Speaking of brushes, so these that look really like they are coarse and almost look like your bristle brushes. They are bristle brush, like a hog's hair brush, but they feel real coarse. And the ones that sometimes you pick up at the paint store called chip brushes, they're what I use for the background because they'll hold more paint and I can get it on quickly. Then I'll switch to a horsehair or a synthetic brush, and it can be flat like this and it feels smooth like your makeup brush, or you can use, and you should use, some really smaller horsehair synthetic brushes. I like round because we have some round objects. Typically, I leave the flat brush for man-made objects like fence posts and architecture. So that kind of gives you a little 101 on brushes, so you don't have to go out and buy 1,000 different brushes. I also have a piece of chalk here that I can use to draw. For the sake of tonight's lesson, I'm actually going to use my charcoal pencil so you can see a little bit better. Okay, now let's get started because I know you're ready. I know you're going to be ready to do this. So get your chalk, or you can paint. You can also use your your paintbrush. You could draw with your paintbrush, and we're just going to block out where the vase is and the flowers. So let's draw a vase. So I know a vase has an oval lip to it. So there's my oval lip. It's got a neck that kind of makes two lazy canoe shapes opposite each other, right? They're like vertical. And then it's got this bulbous bottom to the base, or body of the base. Okay, and you notice I just drew that with my arm. I'm not like this with my hand, making it really tight. I want to just loosely draw this shape with my arm. Okay. Now I'm going to actually put in the handle. And that handle is reminiscent of something we did. We did a cubist still life not too long ago. Probably, I don't know, early fall, early spring. And so we cubed everything instead of making it round. But this happens to not be the same vase. It's definitely a different color than the one we were doing before. Okay, I'm going to count how many flowers I have. All right, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of significant shape. I definitely have a few little blobs, but they're insignificant, and I'm not going to worry too much with those. I want to worry about these bigger ones. All right, so I've got one up here at the top. I'm just going to block in a circle up here. And I have an oval over here. These could be daisies, they could be mums. I'm not really sure. It's an impressionistic painting, so I'm not really sure exactly if this is a rose. Could be. The idea is I just have a beautiful set of flowers to look at. So here's another flower, this little peachy one. There's a little red one hanging next to it, a maroon one. So you can see there's almost this linear thing going on right across my page too. That makes a great composition. And then I have what looks like another circle that's balancing on top of this one. I could go ahead and block this one in, but he's kind of in the background, barely noticeable, but I'll just go ahead and put him. Don't really need to do my table. So this is how my composition looks. Now what I'm going to do is mix up my background color and paint all between those shapes, around those shapes. And how do we do that? So to make brown, you're going to use all the primary colors. So I'm going to take a little bit of the red with my bristle brush and put it on the plate. I'm going to take a little bit of my blue and put it on the plate. I know, you want to use brown right out of the can, I'm sure. And I'm going to take a little bit of yellow. I'm going to mix the primary colors together. Just like that. If it's looking a little green, like mine is, that means you need to add a little more red, because green is yellow and blue. So it means we just didn't have equal parts. Or maybe my blue is darker than your blue. It's taking over. Okay, so now I get a brown. Well, that's obviously not the color of the background. But the more white I add, which is a tint, you're going to get a very, very light brown. I'm not going to mix it in all of the brown. I'm just going to mix it over here. And I'm getting kind of a gray brown, which tells me I need a little more yellow. A little more red. And then it's just kind of a, it's like you're being the chemist right now. You're trying to figure out a beautiful background color. If you kept mixing all into the original that you did, then you will probably be not as satisfied. I'm just picking little bits up as I go to create the background that I want. So I'm going to pick a little bit more of that up, a little more of my white. I'm almost there. Getting kind of peachy. Oh, there it comes. There it comes. And I'm going to put a little more white in. Aha. So it just became a trial and error. You can see how I kind of went around like in a fan to get exactly what I wanted. Now I'm going to put it onto the canvas. And I'm going to paint left to right. I think it needs a little more yellow into it. That's white. You can paint right onto the canvas too. It's called wet on wet when you paint right onto the canvas. So everybody has a different blue or red or yellow. So don't be frustrated if your brown to begin with looked a little different from my brown. I like this kind of flesh tone. By the way, this is how you make different skin tones. Be fun for us to do a project in the future. Maybe you'll join me in person soon. That'll be fun. I'm just going, and it's okay if I go over my chalk lines or my pastel lines. That's okay. Just putting this buff color, maybe that's a good word for it, buff color. As my nice backdrop. You can see it's picking up a little bit of charcoal from my blocking drawing. When you're working in oil, it gets a little more forgiving, but somehow the charcoal just really sinks into that oil painting. But we're using acrylic paints today. So you're going to see it's picking up and dragging some of it into it. That's all right. I'm using a gallery wrapped canvas today. This is a canvas board or canvas panel. So gallery wrap means that the canvas is wrapping to the back side and stapled to the back. That way, if I just want to go ahead and display it, I don't have to worry about framing it right away and it looks finished. Whereas with this, I definitely have to get a frame to hang it up. So I'm just going all the way around. I just picked up a little bit more white and yellow to lighten my buff color just a bit more, make some more interesting depth to my painting. I don't want it to be all just solid. This one is all solid, very different looking style. Impressionism, even if you looked at the pointillism style, you would see that there's all these little tiny dots of different colors to make the entire background. It's not just one color. Those of you watching us on YouTube, I'm so glad you're joining us. And you're welcome to review this at any time. If you have any questions, you can always find my website with my email. If you just put Deborah in front of Deborah Goodyear, you can get a hold of me. You can ask me questions, maybe how to finish it off. Maybe if you made too much brown and you didn't know how to quite lighten it. Just didn't quite work. Get a little bit darker in this corner. I definitely want to keep it light in the middle because that's where all my color is going to be. All my fall color. Oh, can't wait for fall. Wherever you're joining us around the world, we're glad you're here. Okay, I think I got it kind of filled in, and you can see I just overlapped near my shapes because I know I'm going to be filling in those shapes, but I don't want to leave too much outside of the shape so that I don't have to come back and try to match my background. I'd rather make my shape smaller, having covered them with paint now than having to come back later and cover. Okay, so that's our background. See, we did all that in less than 15 minutes. And so now we're going to focus on the next thing that would be there after the background, which would be the vase. The vase would have existed next, and then the flowers were placed into the vase. So kind of go in the order that things grow or would have been in place first. Okay. Or things in front, would go last too. Okay, so now I need to make up this ochre mustardy yellow, right? So I happen to have an earthy yellow right here, and I'm just going to get another plate. You could use the same plate. So I've got this yellow right here. Ta-da! And I want to earth it up a little bit. So believe it or not, I got a little blue and a little red. And I already had yellow on my brush. I didn't wash between picking up colors to mix. I'm gonna dirty this up a little bit. I think it needs a little more red. And we're going to get kind of that cantaloupe color that we're looking for. You see that? Yeah. It's fun to color mix, I think. Get the color that you're looking for. And look how I barely have hardly any paint. I'm not pouring a lot of paint to make this color. If you want to dull it up a little, it's going to get dull by it's picking up my charcoal pencil. Or if you want to make it a little bit lighter, you could add white. White is a tint. And this will be the underlying color underneath. You can see that I have other shadows and shades on top of the vase, but I need to put this base color in first. I'm still using my hog's hair brush. I didn't need to wash it because it already had this light color on there. The handle on there, like that. The lip and the oval top is going to get hidden by the flower, so I'm not too worried about that. Okay. We could just brighten it a little bit by adding some white right here to make it look more bulbous. So we can do that. Just like that. Looks like I did go outside of my vase, but that's okay. Those are called happy accidents. We can just dip over here on our background and fix that. Maybe there's going to be a leaf right there. So I don't get too hung up on painting outside the lines. There are opportunities for something else to happen. Okay, so we got the vase blocked in. Are you ready to do some more work? Okay, so we're gonna we could just stick with this whole family and go ahead and do the orange flowers. So red and yellow make an orange. And I might want to add just a tad of white to that. And I'm just dabbing it on there. I'm still using my hog's hair brush for that first layer. Since it's impressionistic, I don't really want to define the leaves. I don't really know that this is a marigold, or I don't know what I created. It's just something of color that's really beautiful. Now, of course, impressionistic paintings that you've seen in the past, you might notice that they look like irises or lilies. And that's fine too, if you can even tell what they are. But the point being, no pun intended, the point being that it's an idea, an impression of what it might be. It's not very stylized or realistic at all. Okay, so there's my orange number 1. And it looks like this one over here is a little bit darker. So he needs a little more red in him. Maybe this one has more daisy type petals, right? Like that. Yep. Okay, I can lighten it a little bit if it's looking a little too dark. Painting wet on wet. So it's already wet, and while it's still wet, I can go ahead and lighten it. All right, let's try this big marigold looking one there. We got some yellow, and we want to dirty it up a little bit, so we're going to add a little blue to it. Going to get kind of a golden color. And if I add a little bit of white to it, well, maybe a little. Oh, that's too much green. That's why I just use a little bit at a time. Wow, I'm liking that little mustard. I'm just going to kind of push the brush from the center of the flower out. This will be my first layer. I'll come back with some other colors on it later. Here's my first pass at it. It looks like this guy over here has a little bit of it on the bottom area, so I'll stick some there. Okay, now we're going to make some red flowers. You ready for that? So I got red. That was easy peasy. Take some white. I'm going to get that pretty rosy pink. Maybe this time I use some red with a tiny bit of green. It gets to be like a dusty pink, right? I could put some dusty pink in between. Kind of those folds of the rose, you know? Okay. Now I'm going to do a strictly almost, I don't know, almost like a salmon color or shrimp kind of color here. So that one in. Now this one's a little bit darker, which means the opposite of red is green. That's how you would get that darker color. Yay! I'm so excited, you guys, to paint this along with you. Seems like it's been a while, a whole month, you know. Doesn't go fast enough when you're wanting to paint with people. And I love seeing your artwork. Honestly, I really do. Seeing how you interpreted it, how you made it your own. So these two I made darker just by adding a touch of green. And that's how I get that almost a dusty burgundy crimson color. Okay. If I just want to use red without mixing it with anything else, I can put a little more of that in there. Now this one is almost like a peachy color, isn't it? So I already have that salmon color. And I think what I want to do is I poured some orange. So I'm just going to tap a little orange into my salmon color. And I'm going to get a little bit dark peachy color. Just enough difference to make it interesting. Can you believe we just about covered the entire canvas except for a couple little holes where we could add the center of the flower, or it could just be lighter petals going on, which is what's happening here. So I love that just in that little breadth of time we've created something pretty pretty. All right, there we go. Let's make that lighter color, and then we could put in kind of that golden. So we're going to go back to our palette here, try to recreate it. Kind of fades into the background, so it's a lot like the background color, but there's definitely something in there. This is creating depth now because we have the ones in the front and we're creating these little guys that are receding, that are in the back. Mix a little white with some of the gold. And finish off this one. I'm still using the hog's hair. I'm still just getting enough paint on the brush to cover the canvas. And then we'll get into details in the last half hour. So, all right, well, the only thing we have left to do is maybe put in a few of these little buds with some green and yellow. Now you can make green with blue and yellow. I want to lighten it. I don't want it to be so bright. That might be even a little too bright. Dirty it up a little bit. Okay, so there's two buds here. I think that's everything. So there's a little orange and a tiny little red one popping through. So let's do that. Just orange. White. So there's one right in here. So I'm filling it in. Oh no, I get excited. It's coming together. And there's a tiny little guy right there. Okay, so now we're creating a little composition going up and down, and then we got left to right. So if this is more of a centralized composition if you had to define it. Okay, you notice I do not have any black on my palette. I do not love to work with black at all. But I do have that really dark brown that I started with. So I'm going to now switch to one of my small brushes that is synthetic or horsehair. And I'm going to go through and give some of these flowers some little centers. You notice how I'm going radial around the center? Don't go back and forth like this. It won't be as effective. Just a little bit of paint on my brush. I don't have much on there. Pretend you are an oil artist and you don't put a lot of paint on your brush. But a little goes a long way. Okay, so I got these two centers. This one has a dark center. I love contrast. You want to have things that are really light and you want to have things that are really dark when you're doing still life or even a portrait, right? The skin might be really light, or if it's a dark skinned person, maybe you want the background to be really light so that they'll showcase better. I like contrast no matter what, even if I'm doing a landscape. Okay, so right in here, this one here has a a center that I can only see like 3/4 of it. Because there's some that's blowing right over the top of it. This one over here is kind of just peeking out. It's inviting me over here, extending my line, my eye across the page by putting that little darkness. And I'm going to put some darkness on this side. Again, extending the eye. It's really about your composition. You could be the best flower painter and really do a stylized and wonderful detail, but if you didn't place it really well on the canvas, it's not going to be as pleasing. Okay, so I've got a little shadow. This darkness is acting almost like a little shadow. So this flower is now in front of this one. Oh, we got one more. See, if you'd used black, I think it would have been too harsh. That's why I like this dark brown that we made. And I'm just kind of pulling my brush from the center, going out. Wow. Okay, we just made a very simple still life that you could stop now and be done, but we got to do leaves, we got to do some shade and shadow, some details, really make this thing come alive. Okay, so I just washed off the brown off my brush because right now I want to concentrate now on some of the light areas of the flowers, and then we can come and work on the vase. So I'm going to dip my brush into a little of that dirty white. And just kind of with the rose, you know how it like makes little folds. So I'm just taking my little brush and adding a few of those folds. Okay. That really made that one pop out further now ahead of this one. This one's now receding. All right, let's see if we can do it. Let's draw attention now to the center one. We want it to pop forward. And right now, it's almost on the same plane as these three, even though they're slightly different in color. So let's work on that. So I got some white. Doesn't take much. This is called scumbling because you don't want to put white and cover up everything that you did already. You want that other color to shine through. So I don't have very much paint on my brush at all. So I'm just scumbling or scratching the surface to make it look like it's a red flower with light shining on it. It's not a white flower. A little bit on the tips of this one. And then last but not least, I see that there are some white spots in this one. I'm going to make it a little bit more interesting. And then, of course, we have this one. It's kind of drooping down, so we're going to add a little more bright white to this one. Maybe this is the spider mom over here. I know I might be going a little fast. You can always play it back. Okay, now let's brighten up the little buds there. Oh, that might be too bright. We're gonna add some white to that. All right. Oh, I think we need a little touch of orange in this maroon one for fun. Maybe a little touch of salmon in this one. So I'm kind of pulling some, just little hints of the other flower colors in across the page. Oh. And then I'm going to go back and get my brown. Got a tiny little bit of brown on my brush, just so very little. I'll just make it dry and not very wet. And I'm going to brush a few strokes through this tangerine, orangey peach blob. But now it's going to look like a flower. And I'm going to use some of it to also put on some of the petals of the red. And maybe right under. So this one looks like it's behind, so it's like kind of making a shadow underneath. I can also take a little bit of that brown and put it. I'm scumbling because I can still see the mustard underneath. That means you shouldn't have much paint on your brush at all. And it might take a while to get down this technique. You may not get it right off the bat, but you could try it again with all cool colors, or just try it again just as it is. My mother-in-law has a wonderful big still life when you walk in the door of her home. And it's huge. I mean, obviously a vase with that kind of flowers in that size that's shown in the painting would be like when you walk into a hotel, maybe it's the centerpiece. She has this beautiful still life that was done. And I just love it. It's just welcoming, you know? And she only had to pay for the painting once, right? Instead of fresh flowers every time. Okay. All right. Well, maybe we need a little bit of something. Okay, so let's work on the base now. Okay, so I've got my brown here, and I'm going to put a little brown because there's a shadow that's cast from the handle, right? It's like shadow. And I want it to look more 3D. I'm not going to define it. I'm not going to get my circle template out and try to make it circular. I'm just freehanding it. I'm giving you an idea that this thing is creating a shadow. Put one here, put some underneath, like that. This might be one of your most fun paintings you do because it's so freeing. You know, it doesn't have to be so perfect. In fact, there's no perfect in art. Okay, now I'm just going to put a couple little streaks. Because this thing, it's probably a ceramic base. It probably has a gloss to it. Just going to put a streaks. Now I'm going to do a very, almost like a mossy green, right? I have something kind of here from before, but it looks a little too gray. If I just put a tiny little green on there, I can turn it into something a little dirtier. Dirty green, a swampy green. Swampy green. Again, I want to scumble it. So if it goes on too heavy, use a towel or your finger before it dries. It's more difficult painting sideways, isn't it? I'm like, I can't stand in front of it or you won't be able to see it. So hopefully it's looking not too off. Of course, with pottery, it could look a little off anyway when it's hand thrown. Okay, now I'm going to add a little white to it, like it's glowing. And that just adds to the fact that it's bulbous. I like that gold that I made earlier. It's too fun. Okay, add a little more bright color to it. A little more peachy. If you got too much green, you can just come back over it. I want that handle to kind of glow. Stick out. Okay. All right. Let's do all those green leaves, right? And stems. So I've got my yellow and green, which is made from yellow and blue. And I want to lighten it, so I'm going to pick up a little white. And I'm going to get a light green. I want to make sure it's on the yellow side, so I'll put a little more yellow back into it. So I know that these two have stems coming out to the roses, so I can go ahead and just lightly put a line from there. And this one's going to have one. I know this one has one. I know this one, so I'm establishing where all of the stems go, and then I can come and work on giving them some darks and lights to the stem and some leaves. This one, there's a little one hanging out under there. think I got all the stems. Maybe there's a small one right here. Okay. All right, I'm going to put a little blue to my yellowy green. It's a little more blue to it. And that's going to be a nice little cool color addition to this really warm painting. Oh, got a little too much blue. Let's put some yellow back. Let's look at a little teal. Knock it back down. And I'm just kind of going next and putting a little bit of dark next to the already stemmed areas. And then I'm adding, with a flick of my wrist, I'm adding some leaves. Okay, I want to make a mossy green. It's just yellow and green. And I want to dirty it up a little bit. So I'm going to add some orange or red to dirty it up, because the opposite of green is red. And that is going to make it less bright. Okay. Now I'm going to look around the canvas and say, oh, maybe I should have some of that, because maybe a leaf fell down here. Oh, maybe one fell over here. See, so I'm kind of just streaking the background with some interest as well. Looking a little bit darker green to put in here. So by adding red, it's going to get a little darker. Inside there and over here. Maybe in there too. See how it's coming together? All right, so I'm cleaning off my brush, because now we're going to add just all those finishing touches to it that are going to make it special. So I am going to get my burgundy out that I made, which was a little bit of red and then a tiny bit of the green to make that dark. I'll add a little blue to mine too. Because with the lights hitting somewhere over here, I want to make sure that I put in a few dark edges to my beautiful flowers. Now that I got all the leaves in there, I want to cast a little bit of shadow onto the leaves. Ta-da! Maybe on this side, right? Because this is a little darker. Ooh, maybe this one's a little sunflower. Okay. A little bit darker under there. So this is where you just go around and see where you might need some low lights and some highlights. So the low lights would be the darker areas that are required, and if you need to add white to make something pop out. So you just go around your canvas, see what it might need. A little bit around my stems would be necessary. Maybe a little more white. Sometimes you might have dirtied up too much and you lost some of your white. Or maybe you need it to define an area a little bit more. Using a little blue that's opposite orange. So I can dirty up this side of my base. Are you having fun yet? I love teaching these classes. I'm gonna have to do some animals and build a variety for everybody, especially back in person. I can walk around the room, help you out a little bit. Okay, voila, you have a beautiful fall still life. to put into your home and get excited about the fall and the cinnamon smells, pumpkin. So we don't want to forget to sign our name. That's always very important. I'm going to use some orange. Make sure that you're signing at least a ½ inch into the canvas so that if you do frame it, it doesn't get hidden, right? I'm going to come look at it from this side. Yeah. Maybe it needs a little touch more of white. When you look at it from different angles, it's always good for you to back away 3 feet from it, stand 3 feet away from your art. That's where it's meant to be viewed. And I have been painting from the side this whole time at about a foot away. And so there's areas that I like to reevaluate when you look at it from further away. Like just back up a little bit from it so that you can see what it might need. Or go take a break, right? Go and get a glass of water, walk around the block, come back, and it will take on new meaning for you. Because sometimes we just get so close and personal to it that it's frustrating that you don't quite feel like you're getting anywhere. And then you come back from your walk and you go, oh my gosh, it's better than I thought it was, So don't get frustrated. It's just paint. You can always paint over it. Don't hide it in your closet. It's progress, because the more you do it, the better it's going to get and the better it's going to feel. Yep. So I hope you enjoy our evening tonight. I am excited that there will be some in-person classes coming up. And if you need to send me your artwork for me to just look and have a fun time looking at it, or to make some comments, you can do that. You can send it to Deborah@DeborahGoleyArt.com. You can also send it to me or Rosie at the City of Goodyear, where you got the link for tonight. And they do still have the online gallery, so you can add your art to the online gallery. There's not anything else. I would love to see your work, and I hope that you will continue painting and enjoying just having that expression. It's all yours. It doesn't have to even look exactly like mine. You can tell that every time we do this, or I do one, it may take on a little bit different look. So show me your work, stay in touch.